In the first scene of the film, with the help of a short cartoon, we get acquainted with the background of our heroine. Since childhood, she had a good imagination and loved to invent stories. But her own story turned out to be sad. She met a loved one, but their happiness was short-lived. The killer killed her husband, and the police were never able to find the culprit. The police only know that it was a black mechanic in a red sweatshirt. And now the heroine has to live with unbearable pain from grief inside. The next dynamic scene introduces us to several characters at once. It's raining. The main character, Samantha, decides to commit suicide, unable to endure the pain of losing her husband any longer. She arrives at the scene of his death and walks out into the rain with a gun in her hands. At the same time, two children, a boy and a girl, decide to steal food from the store. They are hungry and have no other choice. A wounded man mentally talks with God. He is apparently going to perform some kind of medical procedure himself and asks God to look after the children if anything happens to him. Judging by the photos next to him, we're talking about children from the store. The theft was unsuccessful. Little criminals had to run from the guard. By doing this, they prevent the main character from committing suicide. In front of her eyes, the girl is hit by a car. She has to postpone her terrible plans for later and take the children to the hospital. It seems that God intervened in your plans, woman, so don't repeat your mistake. In the clinic, the girl is being helped and she falls asleep. Her brother forces Samantha to make a promise that she will come to them again in the hospital because the girl wanted to talk to her. The woman gives him her business card. So tonight we don't have to worry about her taking her own life. Leaving the hospital, she notices a man at the reception desk and hears his first and last name. It turns out to be her best friend from childhood. Joe, a friend of Samantha's, does turn out to be somehow connected with the children, although he does not confirm that these are his children. He and Samantha agree to meet. She has another reason to stay alive. For a few minutes, we dive into Joe's memories. When he, still a little boy, came to a new school, all the children turned out to be hostile toward him. Everyone except Samantha. She was glad to sit next to him, to exchange food, to be his friend. And he, as a thank you, protected her from other boys. Well, this is a really good basis for a strong friendship. But why hadn't they seen each other for so long that they didn't even recognize each other? Samantha arrives home. She lives on a remote ranch. In the car, she hides the gun in the glove compartment, which is good, which means she does not plan to use it yet. Samantha strokes the horse and talks to her. How can you plan suicide, knowing that you have an animal at home that is completely dependent on you? At home, Samantha has a large art studio. She creates children's books, and also a lot of her husband's things with which she is constantly in contact. Samantha is immersed in memories. Here her husband returns from work and is happy that Samantha has started writing a new children's book. Here she arranges a funny prank for him and jokingly runs away from him. Here they arrange a real chase on horseback, and then they kiss at sunset. They seem to be a very happy and loving couple. In the morning, Samantha is woken up by a phone call. These are her new friends, children. The boy scolds her for breaking her promise and not coming. The woman immediately gets ready to go, having learned what food to buy for the children. Sam comes to the children's home. This is a poor area, which is to be expected. The girl Keisha is mute, but she always writes what she wants to say in a notebook. She thanks Samantha for her help. The boy immediately pounces on the brought pizza and sweets. They live with their grandmother. But Samantha notices another person. This is the children's neighbor, and he reminds her of the killer who killed her husband. Joe's house turns out to be nearby. He also does not live in the best area. At the door of the house, Samantha meets with Denise, a colleague of Joe, who for some reason easily comes to his house. Maybe she's his girlfriend. Joe has a lot of children's drawings and photos with children in his house. It is unlikely that these are his children. There are too many of them for one man. Samantha also discovers a bed with medical equipment there. Is Joe sick? Joe appears. He has pizza boxes and glasses of drinks in his hands. He asks Sam to help him. They leave the house together and meet a school bus full of children. Children rush to hug Joe. They are crazy about this man. During the next touching scene, we learn two important things. First, Joe is constantly in need of dialysis. And secondly, he is something like a teacher and mentor for all these children. Samantha is haunted by the neighbor of the girl she saved. She briefly returns to his house and sees that he has exactly the same red sweatshirt, which was the killer who killed her husband. In the evening, Samantha goes to the police, but the police officer appears to be very racist. He did not care about Samantha's suspect, brushed it off, and also tactlessly hinted that most of the people from the projects would not grow old anyways due to the lifestyle. This cop is a real ass. My worst suspicions will be confirmed, and now Samantha will really take up the investigation herself. But there is something good in this. While she is trying to establish justice for the death of her husband, she has no time to think about suicide. Samantha arrives at her suspect's house in the evening. She wants to watch, but instead sinks into memories of how she and her husband were relaxing by the fire, and she was reading him an outline of her children's book. A very good outline in my opinion, and her husband agreed. He asked Samantha to finish the book. After these memories, the woman leaves. The next day, she visits Joe again. He tells the children the story of how she once saved his life. Little Joe and Sam were playing in the forest. Joe said that he dreams of becoming a samurai and even organized a training ground in the forest. But suddenly a snake attacked him, and only thanks to the young Sam did he manages to survive. Later, Sam walks Keisha and her brother home. It seems that she managed to make friends with this silent girl. Keisha even invited Samantha to her room. But while the girl went to ask her grandmother for permission to call a stranger into the house, Samantha decided to break into their neighbor's house. Oh, Samantha, this is a very bad idea. If he is the killer, you may be in great danger. There are many suspicious objects in the house. Bullet casings, lots of weird newspaper clippings. Samantha finds an old box in the chest of drawers. But Samantha does not have time to open the box. She hears the sound of the door opening. Run, Sam, run. Samantha manages to run out unnoticed. The would-be killer notices that someone has been sneaking into his house, but believes that it is Mackin, Keisha's brother. Children on the street see that it was Samantha who was sneaking into the house. But Sam manages to buy off Mackin with food and a promise to show Keisha the horse. Samantha calls the police again and asks to check on Keisha and Mackin's suspicious neighbor. I hope this time her request will be taken seriously. Later, Joe and Sam take all the kids on a bus to Samantha's farm. The kids spend an amazing day there, together with animals, amazing nature outdoors. After such scenes, I also really wanted to spend the weekend on the farm. In the evening, they are treated to delicious pies, and Joe tells another story from his life. It turns out that he was once in prison, and, just like at school, they didn't like newcomers there. Samantha, of course, was not around, but she still saved him. Knowing the song, which he once memorized because Sam played it all the time, helped him gain authority and save his life. Meanwhile, the cop calls Samantha back and says that he checked the identity of the children's neighbor and that he was previously the first suspect on the list. However, he has an alibi. Therefore, this impolite officer asks Samantha to no longer distract him with trifles. Samantha falls into despair again. Joe sees her condition and remains to support an old friend. Although he is also bad, he again missed a dialysis to devote more time to the children. Why is everyone so careless about their safety in this movie? Samantha's little guests are going to bed. Keisha returns to the stable where she left her backpack and sees Samantha's horse again. She strokes the animal and quietly whispers some secret of hers into his ear. So this girl can still talk. This is great news. Samantha walks with Joe in the garden. He tells her the story of his dubious adventures. He went to jail for stealing $200. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. 8 years for $200. What kind of judge did he get? Before prison, things were going well for him. He went to college, was one of the best students, and worked at IBM. But one stupid bet landed him in jail. There he stood up for someone weaker, because of which he ended up in a punishment cell. For 100 days he had no one to talk to, and then he turned to God. It changed his life. Later, when both kidneys suddenly failed, he was released from prison and now dedicates his life to sharing the love of the Lord with children. Joe has to interrupt his story because he is getting sick due to the lack of dialysis. Sam saves him again by connecting him to the machine just in time. Later, a sleepy Keisha visits Samantha and Joe. Sam wraps her in a blanket and takes her in her arms, sitting next to Joe, who is hooked up to the dialysis machine. He tells her the sad story of Keisha. A robber broke into their house and killed her mother when Keisha herself was hiding in the other room. And then he set the house on fire. If Keisha's savior had not heard her screams, the girl would have died. Samantha is saddened by the girl's story. Samantha wonders who exactly saved Keisha, assuming it was Joe. But no, it turns out that the neighbor of the children was the savior. The one Sam suspected of murder. Samantha, you must be wrong. Realizing this, the woman cries and tells Joe the story of her husband's death, and then she admits that she has reached a dead end with her investigation. Joe encourages her and tells her that the dead end is just an excuse to start some new path. Samantha puts Keisha to bed with the other kids and then burns her drawings of the killer in the red hoodie. Now she is ready to let this story go. The next morning, Samantha enjoys watching the children play. She seems to be coming back to life. But a new problem occurs. Mackin discovers Joe unconscious in a pool of blood. God, why can't everything be just fine? Why do these films always have one drama after another? Samantha takes Joe to the hospital. Doctors report disappointing news. His body is no longer taking dialysis. Without a new kidney, he will simply die. But there is hope. They are already delivering a new kidney. Samantha comes to Joe's room. He is afraid that he may not survive the operation. Samantha tells him a story about a little boy who knew he would be a great warrior, and his best friend didn't believe him. But when many years later the boy and his friend met again, the friend saw that before him was a brave, honest, and courageous warrior. She gives Joe a drawing of him as a samurai next to all of his children. The drawing is amazing. Later, Mackin comes to Joe. He confesses why Keisha got hit by a car, and also shows Joe his diary. It turns out that he is a very smart boy and gets good grades. At the end of this scene, he asks Joe to be his father. Mackin is crying, Joe is crying, and Samantha is crying behind the wall. This is so touching. Joe, now you must survive. Samantha brings Mackin home and sees Keisha whispering something in her grandmother's ear. The girl began to speak, albeit not with everyone. They, along with their grandmother, invite Samantha to the house. Keisha's entire room is covered with drawings. The girl is talented and loves drawing. But among her drawings, Samantha sees a bird that she once drew herself, and which her husband carried in his wallet. She asks the children who exactly showed Keisha how to draw this bird, and the children point to the neighbor. Her initial suspicions were not groundless. Samantha rushes to the car to call the police, but then gives up on the idea. The police have let her down so many times that now she wants to act on her own. There is a gun in her glove compartment. She grabs it and breaks into the house of the suspect. She finds the box again in the chest of drawers, and in it is a drawing of her bird. There can be no doubt that it's him. The suspect himself, Anthony, appears. Samantha threatens him with a gun and shows him her drawing. And then Tony tells her the truth, which turns her world upside down. It turns out that Sam's husband, on the evening of his death, treated Anthony to coffee and offered him a lift, as it was raining heavily. But his car broke down and Tony helped fix it. They talked about many things. Samantha's husband was very kind. Then they said goodbye, but a moment later Anthony heard the sound of gunshots. He ran around the corner and saw the robber who shot Samantha's husband. He ran away and Anthony tried to help, but it was too late. Before his death, Samantha's husband asked him to tell her to always fly above the clouds. Only he could know this phrase because of this. Samantha has to believe Anthony's words. The man admits that meeting her husband changed his life. Joe is taken away for surgery. Samantha reads the letter he left her. He admits that he has never felt more alive than now, before death, that the children changed his life and now they will change the life of Samantha because she will take care of them. We see Samantha leaving the hospital. She comes to the grave with a bouquet. Is this Joe's grave? But no. Here comes Joe himself, healthy and happy, in an embrace with his girlfriend. Together they approach Samantha and her husband's grave. Thank God, Joe is alive. And Samantha is also fully alive. She writes children's books again, loves life again, and believes that God is always there. Joe managed to change her life. This film is a bit atypical. As the story progresses, we expect that the heroine is about to be able to find the killer of her husband and achieve justice. But in the end, no retribution. But that doesn't make the movie worse. On the contrary, it makes it clear that there are more important things in life. For example, this life itself. Good things that people can do for each other. Love of God, love of children, love for each other. After viewing, warmth and faith in humanity remain in the soul. If you are sad or you are experiencing disappointment in life and people, I strongly advise you to watch Unconditional. Thanks for watching another essential movie recap. Please like and subscribe.